Coming up this week, should the Senate be nonpartisan? Also, we tackle the topic of post-traumatic stress disorder. This and much more to come. Hitting the streets, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Well, the brave men and women who are always on the front lines, be it in our military, in law enforcement, or medical personnel, play a vital role in the health, safety, and security of all Canadians. But for many of these people, witnessing traumatic events while on the job could have an adverse effect on their mental health and could result in post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not only a big problem here in Canada, but also around the world. So we took to the streets to get your ideas on how to deal with the matter. Our question: what is the best way to assist members of the military and first responders who suffer from PTSD?
I have family members in the military who suffer greatly from PTSD related to their tours, and they need better access. They need to know that they're not weak. They need to know that people aren't going to judge them, because, you know, it doesn't seem like a very manly thing to do, you know, if you're falling apart on the inside. And so, you know, just access and, you know, letting people know it's okay.
The most important thing that has to be done is for Canadians and to realize that this is not a made-up thing. I think a lot of people don't really think it's true, and I have some experience in this as well, and I think that the more medical services we can provide, and there is an organization here in New Brunswick called Marijuana for Trauma, which is utilizing cannabis to help veterans with PTSD, and from what I've been able to read, it's working fairly well. So I think that that's something that we should look at. I think we really have to. The time has come in our culture to innovate and use new approaches and new ways of doing things and get off our bums and really make a difference.
I mean, they deal with very difficult circumstances in their line of work, and as you know, I can only imagine what they go through. And you know, we need to support those people. They play a very integral role in our country and our communities, and we need to make sure they're looked after. And I'm not sure that our government always does the best job, and I think there's certainly room for a lot of improvement, but they need to have resources available in order to seek the help that they need to be able to move on and hopefully to cope with what's going on with them.
Well, being a vet myself, I know there's resources located, you know, the Legion sends out people to see who's on the streets and who's struggling as a vet or a first responder, and they point them in the right direction. So that's helped me, and 2 years ago they approached me, and now I'm like back on my feet.
Well, I think we need to take it serious. I think we need to take it very seriously as a society. I think we need to embrace the knowledge that we have about PTSD. We have to, diminish any stigma related to it, and we have to understand that these people are no different than us. They are us. They work on our behalf, and they deserve every bit of society's efforts in terms of helping them through what obviously has been some significant mental hardships. So I think we need to get at it. We need to take it seriously. We need to set up the supports both within the healthcare system, and I think if you're in the military, through that system as well, which I believe hasn't lived up to its responsibilities.
These people need help, and they're not getting it. These people served our country, and we deserve to give them what they need. If they come back and they're broken, we have to fix them or help them.
Well, I know there are plenty of community services dedicated to making sure that they cope well after their time serving, right? I think accepting them back into our society and back into our culture with open arms is the best way to go about that.
I think that there needs to be government programs that certainly are open and easy to access, particularly for individuals who are suffering. And I think it needs to be diagnosed easier as well. I think there's certainly a public, it's difficult. There's a bit of a public shaming in some cases for these illnesses, and they're still illnesses. They're still mental illnesses, and they certainly do need our support.
Are we doing enough?
No, I don't think we're currently doing enough. I think we could certainly be doing more. I think public awareness on this and public perception of it needs to be changed, because obviously these are people that have fought for us and they've worked very, very hard, and they're now suffering, and we shouldn't be turning our back on them.
I know personally even members of my own family that have suffered from P.T.S.D, and they have found that treatment is available, however it is capped. For people that are fighting for our country, there should not be a cap.
I guess if you can't actively participate in their recovery, would be by donation, supporting them that way.
And your thoughts?
The same thing.
Yeah. Do you think that we're doing enough to help them as a nation?
I don't know how much we're doing, so
okay.
I can't.
Do you feel as a nation we're doing enough to help our first responders and our military who are dealing with this now?
I think it's improving, but I think it's about time that happened.
I would say offer them resources such as counseling, medications when necessary, and just really understand what their issues are. Better education for the public.
Are we doing enough as a nation?
I don't believe so. I don't think so. I work as a volunteer in the mental health area, and I feel that they don't have enough education resources.
So how do we improve that? What needs to be done?
Just higher profile, more visibility, more talking points, public discussion on it.
Which Canadian province made it illegal to sell pop from cans between 1984 and 2008? Alberta, Quebec, or Prince Edward Island?
Do we got to agree? Can we do different answers?
You can do different answers.
I'm saying PEI.
Alberta. No clue. I'll go with PEI.
Prince Edward Island.
Quebec.
Quebec. Quebec.
Oh. No.
Prince Edward Island.
I'll go with PEI as well.
It's Prince Edward Island.
All right.
Between 1984 and 2008, it was illegal to sell pop in cans in PEI. All carbonated drinks had to be purchased in refillable glass bottles. PEI was the only place in North America to have a can ban. Recently, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appointed 9 non-affiliated senators to the upper chamber to fill spaces left by senators who have retired. There are still 12 vacancies left to fill. Almost 2 years ago, Trudeau removed Liberal senators from the caucus in order to end partisanship and put forth some Senate reform. Conservative senators, however, are still free to vote with and for their party. But is it an effective solution? Our question: should the Senate be nonpartisan?
Senators shouldn't be biased. They shouldn't have an agenda. They aren't elected members. They are appointed by the Prime Minister, so they should come in with a different perspective rather than focusing on what the party's agenda is and their stance on it. Rather, I think it's best to have ordinary citizens and to voice their opinions and have that available.
Yeah, absolutely. The Senate is there to provide a sober second thought is what it's called for the government. And, you know, with governments, there's always political pressure and partisanship, and the Liberals want to do one thing because they're Liberal and the Conservatives want to do one thing because they're Conservative. So the Senate is actually there to balance out the two and make sure that there's unbiased.
I think the Senate should be nonpartisan. I think it'd be very difficult for the Senate in modern times to be nonpartisan because of politics, because of the way things are shaped up, and because of the bureaucracy of it all. But I think that would be a wonderful goal. I think it might be a little bit wishful thinking, but I think it's something that we could certainly be working towards, certainly.
Well, my personal belief is the Senate should be abolished, but if there has to be one, it should be nonpartisan.
Why?
Because they're there as a second voice, so if it's a nonpartisan voice, it might be more objective and more fair.
I think there should be no Senate, but they should be nonpartisan. Yes.
No, it's time the Senate was disappeared.
Why?
Because they're not doing very much, except spending a lot of taxpayers' money.
I think a nonpartisan Senate would be the ideal. I'm not sure that we could ever get to that point of being nonpartisan because many of the people that are appointed are tied to parties in one way or another. That's how they get through the appointment process. So I'm not sure about nonpartisan. Certainly, I think if we could have more say in who gets to the Senate through elected senates or something of that nature, I think that'd be a big improvement.
I think it definitely should be nonpartisan because it's too much influence. You know, if you're not a part of a certain party and, you need, they have a decision to make on something that they don't like, well, they're just not going to do it. So I think that it should be nonpartisan. Everybody has a fair shot. They make fair decisions, not based on any political affiliation.
Well, I think I kind of do. I think the Senate should be nonpartisan. I think it should be more effective. I do not believe that it should be taken away from Canadians. I think it performs an important role if it's utilized as it was designed to be utilized, which is as a chamber of sober second thought. And I have personal experience with that, with a senator who I appeared actually before the Senate committee on an issue many years ago, and we managed to get some things changed, and to the benefit of many other Canadians. So I'm a big believer in the Senate. I do think it should be nonpartisan.
Why?
Why? Because I think the place for partisanship is in the Commons and not in the Senate.
Yeah, I would agree with it being nonpartisan. I mean, at the end of the day, they're kind of like, you're, like you said, like you're kind of like a watchdog or a second opinion. Either prevent something from going through that shouldn't or vice versa. So, I mean, I don't really see any reason for them to be aligned to a political party. I think they should be just independent on their own.
I think I actually have mixed feelings about that because I know when they say that they want to make the Senate nonpartisan, it might actually just be a matter of concealing partisan identity. I know Liberal senators are technically independent senators, but they're functionally Liberal senators, so I don't know if that really changes much.
If senators are nonpartisan, and non-elected, then how over time do we hold, and they're appointed for life, how then do we hold them to account? How do we send them feedback if we're unhappy with them? If they're not elected, what right necessarily do they have to hold up the business of the folks that we have elected? So I'm still trying to come to grips with an unelected, nonpartisan Senate and what it might mean for us in the future. I think there's risk there.
Absolutely. I mean, we should have the best people there. I think they should be elected by the public. I don't think that partisan should be in politics anywhere, period.
Canada has played host to the Olympic Games how many times? 2, 3, or 4?
4.
3.
3.
3. 3. 4.
3.
The answer is 3.
Nailed it again.
You're doing great. Canada has hosted the Olympic Games on 3 separate occasions. The 1976 Summer Olympics in Montreal, the Calgary Winter Olympics in 1988, and the Vancouver Winter Olympics in 2010. The federal government's plan to clean up the environment recently took a bold step with the pledge to stop burning coal to generate electricity by the year 2030. But taking care of the environment can also occur on the community level, with each individual citizen doing their part. So once again, we took to the streets and posed this question to Canadians. What can municipalities do to help improve the environment?
Oh, that's a very difficult one because, of course, municipalities don't have complete and total power over everything. That being said, certainly I would say increasing taxes, levies on businesses to force them to take more of a look of what they're putting out there and what kind of toxins are going into the air. That could certainly be something I would think that should be increased.
Well, I live in the country, so the countryside, so the municipality is really involved in keeping the environment clean, respecting the laws, and making sure that people live in a safe, clean environment.
So they have just as much responsibility as urban centers?
Oh, they definitely do, because municipalities are responsible for the basics, sewer, water, and that.
Accept the new technologies that are out there, accept the new norms as far as conservation is concerned. Just listen to people, listen to the experts, and don't close your doors on them.
I like that you said municipalities because geographically we are very diverse, so I think it's unfair to encapsulate it into one size fits all concept. So I don't know, speaking from a Manitoban perspective, it's really cold in here, and I know that we've installed a bunch of windmills in the northern part of Manitoba. However, once it gets super cold, they don't work anymore. I'm a big fan of solar panels. I think that it should be mandatory that every building has it. I think it's a great idea to install gardens everywhere and, make things more locally, or, even put them on rooftops. Look at how much space we have everywhere that has so much potential, but we're just simply not using it. I think they're trying to push Winnipeg Transit to be a little more accessible, but I think that has a lot of more work to do. So, if we could reduce the amount of people that are riding their cars, and it's great that we're improving our bike lanes as well. Winnipeg has so much potential because we're really flat, but that being said, we have snow for 6 months of the year. But if you look at countries like Denmark and Copenhagen, everyone rides their bike. And I think that Winnipeg could have the potential to do that.
Well, one thing, just to make sure that that policies that in municipalities put in place think about the environment, that they're environmentally sustainable, or that is part of the consideration. I think we can be good promoters of renewable energy initiatives and projects. We've done, in the city of Fredericton, for instance, we've been a test site for things like trying to improve efficiency in our buildings. And we've been pilots for some of the startups in the city. And those relate more to parking and so on, and transit. But if we can help transit, we're helping the environment by taking vehicles off the road. So I think we have a part in that way. If people have ideas, we should try and be a site for them to implement those ideas.
I think it comes down to the recycling programs, coming up with a comprehensive recycling program and make it so that we can recycle more things. And I know it's kind of a pain in the behind, but my mother lives in Sackville, and they have a 3-bag system. And by using the 3 bags, you're recycling everything you can possibly recycle, and it makes it easier on the people who are dealing with it. So I think dealing with that sort of issue, make it more available.
Well, I think the most important thing is just get some really terrific recycling programs. And I don't know what the big problem is. I mean, here in Fredericton, we've been dragging our feet for years. I've lived in other municipalities, for example, Vancouver and Ottawa, Montreal, where it's just absolutely terrific. I know in Vancouver, I don't think you're allowed to visit Vancouver unless you take a course in recycling before you visit. So I don't know. I just think that it basically, for me, it's recycling and utilizing everything again.
Well, they need to make corporations and local businesses accountable for what they're doing to the environment. And I know a lot of cases there's a lot of businesses trying to be environmentally friendly or be more green, as they say. But there's certainly for example, like the coffee places at Tim Hortons, Starbucks, Second Cup, those places. I know there's been studies done where they've They claim that all their cups get recycled and a lot of them end up in the garbage. I think they need to be held accountable to make sure that our environment is protected. I mean, we only have one Earth. We need to look after it. So our future is as good as our present life is, and we need to make businesses accountable so that they understand what's required of them.
Engage their citizens in a much better understanding of how we live and how it affects the environment, because municipalities are closest to us as citizens, so them having a real feel for how we affect the environment. In Fredericton, Green Matters campaign, diminished use of water in the municipal system, these have all been very successful efforts, but they've kind of fallen off the wayside because the municipality took its foot off the gas in terms of engaging the citizens. And that's I think that's the most important lesson, is that engagement has to be sustainable. If it happens for a year or two and you make some gains and then those gains go away, what have you really accomplished? So how do we work together to keep that sustained over time?
It's just been over 1 year since the Trudeau government came into power, and many people feel this new leadership has put Canada on the map once again, while others feel much still needs to be proven. Canada has a reputation as peacekeepers, and we played a vital role in conflicts around the world, past and present. But how are we seen by our peers around the world? Our question: what is your perception of Canada's place on the international stage?
Yeah, good question. I just came back from Greece after having worked there for a number of months as a volunteer in the middle of the refugee crisis that we saw develop last year. And the common perception that I gathered from especially the refugee migrant community I was working with was a very hospitable Canada, a very welcoming country, especially for migrants and refugees and people suffering from the very difficult circumstances.
So on an international stage, Canada is seen as
a very friendly country, very welcoming and open community and country.
That's actually a tough question. I can only voice my opinion based on being a traveler and going to out of town, out of country places that I think Canadians are looked at. Sometimes they're lumped into the same issues that the United States are for their foreign policy, but typically I find that people do separate Canada from the United States, and it is perceived as a pretty fair, equitable, good place to go for immigrants.
Oh, I think Canada is right up there. I think that all other countries look at us still as peacekeepers and the friendly place to be. You hear it everywhere you go in the world, where you're Canadian and you're almost put on a little bit of a higher pedestal.
Oh, I can be proud to say that it's more or a lot of positives than negative. I can see very little negatives out there. Social media, my friends especially from all over the world, they would love to come over and if possible live here. Yeah, so I'm proud of Canada.
And how people view us from internationally.
They view us, again, in a very positive manner. It's like they say, like I had a friend who told me Canadians don't have any big issues like, our neighbors down south.
I think it's like a pretty developed country. It's cold for sure. That's the first thing that you always hear. And it's also really diverse and welcoming to different cultures. That's like the first thing I heard about Canada.
Right.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, actually. I'm really proud to be Canadian, and I think on a global stage, Canada has a really safe reputation. I know to our neighbors to the south, we sort of have this reputation of we don't really have much importance or we don't matter all too much, but on a global stage, I know we're committed to the environment and we're committed to global safety, and I hope other countries respect us for that.
I think from Canada's point of view on the international stage, we are certainly seen as a very good country. Overall, obviously there's going to be instances to and from, but I think it's something that we should be involved in a little bit more. In comparison to other countries, we have less of a population, but I think we also have a very diverse, multinational population, and I think that can give us a level of tolerance that some other first world countries might not have as much of. And I'm proud to be Canadian. I think it's great.
Do you think that perception has changed over the last few years?
Absolutely, and I think the media and social media particularly has certainly moved things in a completely different direction, both positively and negatively, and I think that's something that is going to continue to change as we move along as well.
Well, my perception is based on what you see, and I mean, when you look at how Canada ranks in the world for best place to live, one of the best countries in the world to do business, I don't think we have to have a perception. I think the reality is that 95% of the world would love to live in a country like ours. So it's reality.
Well, I feel very strongly about this because I think the most proud I've ever been of Canada and its world presence is when we were really top flight, keeping the peace, peacekeepers. We have to go back to that. And I know that we had an administration with the Harper administration where we wanted to be more kind of take a more of an American aggressive approach. And I don't say that in a condescending way to the United States, but I think that we need to go back to becoming respected peacekeepers around the world. As simple as that for me.
We're perceived as a very friendly nation, for the most part, easy to work with, I think. Obviously, though, I think lately there's certainly some issues coming to some trade agreements, so I think, our view from the rest of the world has certainly probably changed a little bit, but for the most part, I think the world sees us as a very friendly nation, easy to work with. They love to come here. Anytime you hear of Canadians traveling abroad, you always hear of, oh, you're from Canada, we love you guys, those types of answers. So I think that the world, for the most part, loves Canadians and knows that we're a very peaceful country and very easy to work with and easy to deal with. So I think we're very well received around the world.
I think that we're kidding ourselves if we think our place is any bigger than it is. We love our new Prime Minister, and we love to think that because people appreciate what he says and how he looks, that it somehow makes us more important. And truthfully, if that gives us some advantage that we can leverage to make change, then why not? But, Canada's record, particularly on the environment, has been dismal. Our use of greenhouse gases, the amount of waste we generate, we're kidding ourselves in Technicolor every moment of the day. We need governments to remind us of what it actually means to be a leader. That means to act and understand what our obligations are to the environment. We've got this incredible, natural, beautiful landscape of a country with abundant resources, and we're wasting it every day of the week. And so why shouldn't we step up and actually be leaders instead of this pompous, self-righteous, we know what's best for the world attitude we often take.
In what year were all Canadian women eligible to vote in federal elections? 1915, 1921, or 1930? 15, 21, or 30?
Oh, I better not screw this one up. 30? 1915. I don't know.
All right, let's go 1915.
1930.
1921.
I'm going to go 1915.
The answer, 1921. The first federal election in which women were eligible to vote and hold office was held in 1921. That's all for this episode of Outburst. Like what you see? Well, you can watch more episodes on our website at www.cpac.ca, on our YouTube channel, and also on our CPAC TV To Go app. You can also join the conversation via social media on Twitter and Instagram at CPAC_TV. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.